Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. A very, very warm welcome. So happy to see all these wonderful faces here today. So my name is Nasreen Memon, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Buddhists across traditions, Jamyang Rainbow Sangha, Sangha Ireland, and the South Sea Sangha. So a very warm welcome from all of us to all of you. So we're here together in Black History Month in the US and LGBTQIA month in the UK, and we're going to celebrate it and honour it. And we have an incredible panel today. We're going to be shining a mindful light on patriarchy and its impact on Buddhism, and especially on our queer, trans, and non-binary BIPOC global majority family. So I've never been to an event that includes so many of us in this way before. The collaborations and the contributions from all the panelists and from you, our wonderful audience, because you'll get a chance to put questions towards the end. This feels like a very special event to me, so I'm very happy to co-host with Kunsang. So we're going to be exploring how mindfulness and Buddhist wisdom can free us from the shackles of patriarchy so that we can move towards healing and reconciliation and even liberation. Going to hear from the deep lived wisdom of our wonderful panelists, Lama Rod Owens, who goes by he, his, from the USA, Bhante Tashi Choedup, they, her, from India, and Freshlev White, who I think is going to arrive soon, also from the USA. So before we start, can we just have, you're there, hello, I'm so happy you're here, welcome. You must have quietly arrived while I was listening to the music. I'm so sorry I didn't see you. Very, very happy to see you and to welcome you. Could we have one sound of the bell, please? So I want to take a moment to acknowledge the energy of Thich Nhat Hanh, our beloved teacher. Many of us call him Thai. He inspired the creation of Buddhists across traditions, and all the other sanghas that are collaborating, well, particularly Rainbow Island, and this collaboration, this spirit of collaboration is very much in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh. He brought so many together, and his legacy continues. I also want to say a very warm welcome to all of our ancestors who are here today with us. This Zoom room is very full and radiating outwards in so many directions, so that feels very potent to me as well. It's all our genetic ancestors, it's our spiritual ancestors, and this collective energy feels like we can honor the earth, and so that we can be in non-discrimination with all of, we want it to be incredibly inclusive and for everybody to feel very warmly welcomed and seen and felt. I'm going to give you a bit of guidance about this space. So we want to orient this session in our practice, so from a place of solidity and our ability to hold one another and listen to one another with respect and openness and non-judgmental. Particularly, it's so generous of everyone to be offering to sit on the panel, and we also welcome all of you to give your time to be here today for this incredible event. We're very happy to be connected with you today. So the sharings and reflections may bring up some discomfort for some of us some of the time. It might bring some dis-ease, and it might touch on personal or entrenched collective views or histories, things that might have happened to us in our past, in our own lives or in our ancestral connections, that energy there. So we invite you to hold that energy and breathe, and to see it as a call for potential transformation and healing, and to maybe hold it with kindness and gentleness, and an openness. So this is a mixed space. We wanted everybody to feel very, very welcome. It's open to the whole public. So we want you to all feel very welcome, and we want it to feel like a caring space, and we want it to be as comfortable as we can possibly make it. We feel that this is an opportunity for growth and for to perhaps even unlearn some of our conditioned behaviours and biases. None of us, is perfect, as you can see from me already, and we think that there's perfection in imperfections, and it keeps it real. And we feel that we want this space to be an opportunity for we acknowledge our mistakes, and particularly if my mistakes with my dyspraxia, if I get anything wrong, I apologise in advance, and I hope I can learn and improve each time. None of us know how to do it perfectly all of the time. We probably wouldn't be human if that was the case. And I want to acknowledge now any mistakes that are made on my part and apologise. And it might be that until the process of unlearning is fully completed, there won't be 100% safety in any space. So I want to also acknowledge that. So real safety doesn't, there probably won't be, there's no guarantee of no discomfort, but it just, sometimes when we can allow ourselves to have difficult conversations, it can strengthen our relationships and our understanding of one another, and deepen our compassion for each other, particularly for people's mistakes, as we can awaken to any ignorance we might have. Maybe have one more bell, please. Thank you, Jacques. So I'd like to invite everybody here today to do whatever you feel is needed to take care of yourself, your body, your thoughts, your feelings. Remember our breath. It's a refuge of safety, and as I was saying earlier, our feelings and our judgments are also an opportunity for personal growth and new insights. We can have limitations because of our social, historical and cultural conditioning and the local context in which we each find ourselves. And it might emerge in our speech, in our language, which might have potential to harm, even unintentionally. And I know everybody here on the panel, we're all open to receiving feedback so that we can improve. So if you spot anything like that, please feel free to share that with us after directly. We would be very happy to receive that. So we're very happy that we can start this I say this evening because I'm in London, but today I should say, Tashi has very kindly agreed to lead us in a guided meditation for 10 minutes, and a particular thank you that you're doing this around midnight in India. We really appreciate you staying up, burning the midnight oil to be with us to do this. And Jacques will start with a bell. I'm just going to quickly talk through what will happen after that guided meditation, just so that everyone can get a feeling for the shape of today. So after that, we'll have the panel discussion, and Kunsang is going to facilitate that. She's disappeared from my screen, but I know you're there, which makes me very happy. And then at the end of the panel discussion, there'll be an opportunity for you to put questions to the panel. All of the questions are going to be anonymized. So if you send the questions either to me or to Rahina, we both have host after our name, we can consolidate them. And if there are any overlaps, we can summarize those and put those to be asked by Kunsang. And if you have any tech issues, Jacques is our tech host, and Rahina, Jacques the Zoom host, but they'll be able to help with any of those issues. As this is a long session, we're inviting you to take a break. If you need to, then please feel free to do that. We want you to be comfortable. And we're recording this event, so if you feel you want anonymity, then please feel free to use the mechanisms to enable that. Turn off your camera, change your name, whatever feels comfortable for you. So you're very, very welcome to update your name if you'd like to do that. If you want, you can put which part of the earth you're on today. We love to see where everybody is. And you're very welcome to put the pronouns you prefer to be known by too. And if you feel like you'd like to introduce yourself on chat, feel free. There'll be a portion of time to do that now, and then the chat will be closed down for the meditation. Everybody's been muted so that there aren't any accidental things we end up hearing, and to have a bit more peace. And yeah, if you feel like you want to raise a question at any point as you're listening to the panelists, feel free to put that in the chat, and Rahina and I will see your questions. Sorry, if you put them to me or Rahina, we'll gather those up and, as I was saying, get rid of any overlaps. And if you need any help with tech captioning, that's also available. Rahina would be more than happy to help you set that up if necessary. So we're not going to leave chat open so that panelists can be fully present when they're speaking, so that we can all fully listen to them. So apologies if I missaid that earlier, but there will be moments when you can put your questions to me or to Rahina. Nearly there. So if there are any technical disruptions, hold on. Just use it as an opportunity to follow your breath and come back home to your breathing. There are mechanisms in place to resolve things very quickly. So finally, I'm going to hand over to Jacques, who will do a sound of the bell, and then Tashi will be doing the guided meditation for 10 minutes. Thank you so much for bearing with me as I got through that.
Let us all begin by settling into a comfortable posture, either cross-legged, or if you're sitting in the chair, comfortably touching your feet, sole of your feet to the ground. Eyes closed or partially closed. Straight back. And take 3 deep breaths. Breathing in and breathing out. Now gently bring your awareness to the natural rhythm of your breath. Let go of any thoughts, images, or feelings that arise. Whenever you become distracted, bring your awareness gently back to your breath. The sensation of your breath going in and out. Enjoy this experience of coming to rest. For this meditation session, we'll contemplate on the essence of loving kindness. What is loving kindness? The essence of loving kindness is the aspiration that everyone may find true happiness, the cause of happiness. We'll begin the meditation by cultivating loving kindness for our own selves. No matter how much of mental afflictions such as anger, attachment, jealousy, and so on are in our mind, they're just like the dirt covering the surface of our mind. Underneath this dirt is the natural purity of our mind, which we may also call as Buddha nature, our inner wisdom, our potential to reach the highest goals imaginable. Imagine this deepest dimension of your own mind as a small, radiant, white light in the center of your heart. In the process to cultivate loving kindness towards ourselves, we'll reflect on 4 points. First one, what are your deepest aspirations in this life? What is your heart desire? What would you really like to achieve in this life? Picture your deepest aspiration very clearly. Arouse the thought, may I realize the well-being that is my heart's desire. With each out-breath, imagine immeasurable rays of light flowing out from your heart, filling and saturating your body and mind, imagining your deepest aspiration being actualized right here and now. We move on to reflect the second one. In order to help you fulfill your highest aspiration, what kinds of material assistance would you love to receive from the world at large? What kinds of friendship and guidance would you love to receive from the people around you? Arouse the thought, may I receive all that I need to help me realize the genuine happiness that I seek. With each in-breath, imagine reality rising up in the form of white light, streaming in from all directions to provide you with everything you need. The help we receive from the world around us is not enough for us to realize the genuine happiness that we seek. For this, inner transformation is essential. Now we reflect on our third point. So how do you love to transform and evolve as a human being? Which faults would you love to be free of? And which qualities would you love to possess? Arouse the aspiration. May I cultivate the true causes of my own fulfillment. With each out-breath, imagine white light radiating the inexhaustible source at your heart. Imagine the white light of loving kindness saturating your body and mind as you actually become that person with those qualities and free of those faults right here and now. And finally, for the sake of your own fulfillment and to make your own life as meaningful as possible, what would you truly love to offer to the world? With each out-breath, imagine the white light of loving kindness radiating out in all directions from your heart, actualizing this offering to the entire world right here and now. With your heart and mind filled with this loving kindness for yourself and for everyone out there, gently open your eyes.
Thank you so much, Tashi. That was so very special, beautiful. Shak, would you like to do the sound of the bell? Thank you so much once again, Tashi. Very special. So I'm going to now hand over to Kumsang, who's going to introduce the panelists.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. And yes, once again, thank you so much, Tashi Choedup, for that wonderful meditation. And also thank you to the organizers from Buddhist Across Traditions for putting this together and inviting me to take part in this as a co-host. My name is Kunsang Keldin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator over at the Jamyang Buddhist Center in London. I'm based in London, and I'm also a member of our affinity group at Jamyang called the Rainbow Sangha. And I am of Tibetan and Kalmyk Mongolian heritage, but I grew up in the States. So just to go over quickly, we're going to jump into the questions for our wonderful panelists who are joining us today from different parts of the world, which is really exciting. How it will go is that we will go into some brief introductions and then some questions for the panelists. And then after that, Nazreen will take it back and we'll kind of lay out the sort of format for the Q&A, which includes questions that have been submitted from all of you guys as the participants. So thank you so much for sending your questions in. And just to get started, to introduce our speakers and start with Venerable Tashi Choedup, who hails from India and is a trans feminine Buddhist monastic with almost a decade and a half of experience in human rights and community work and environmental work. And they're a member of the Telangana State Government Welfare's Board for Transgender Persons. And they are also the national coordinator for India for the preservation of Mahayana tradition for FPMT. So thank you for joining us, even though it was very, very late where you are. Our next panelist is Lama Rod Owens. They are a author, activist, authorized Lama in the Kagyu School of Tibetan Buddhism. Lama Rod is the co-founder of Bumis Parsha, a tantric Buddhist practice and study community. He holds a Master of Divinity degree in Buddhist Studies from Harvard Divinity School, where he focused on the intersection of social change, identity, and spiritual practice. And last but not least, we also have Fresh Lev White, who's a love and compassion activist. He offers mindfulness, coaching, meditation, and diversity trainings as tools for shifting towards more authentic, conscious, and passionate living, working with individuals, households, and professionals. Lev is a certified professional coactive coach and professional trainer, and is mindfully and lovingly grounded in the East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, California, and a grateful graduate of Spirit Rock's Community Dharma Leadership and dedicated practitioner programs. Of course, there's way more information about each of the speakers on our website, and you can look them up and find information about each of our panelists today. Anywhere, if you just Google them, I'm sure you'll find them, because they will probably have lots of incredible things to say, and you'll want to check them out afterwards. So the first thing I think we're going to get into very quickly is what I would like to do is to sort of offer the panelists to just take a minute to locate yourself in this space and share how you are each arriving or entering in this space today. And I know that each of you has done extensive work in so many different areas of Buddhism and Buddhist practice and study, but also have a very special point of view and a very special perspective of intersectionality and looking at where all of these different parts of us really connect, which is why I think having a panel like this right now is really exceptional, and why it's just really nice to carve out the space to have these conversations today. So if you each just wanted to very briefly kind of take turns just kind of talking about how we're showing up today in terms of different identities. I'm not going to pressure you into picking one or anything like that, but you get to choose. You get to say whichever one you want to say, but I just ask you keep it brief, because we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep these questions going. So yeah, if one of you wants to just unmute yourself and start.
Okay, hi. So wonderful to be here, Slev. I'm coming down from driving through a snow blizzard unexpectedly last night. I'm in Navajo territory in the mountains, Arizona, and I'm from Huichin territory, the land of the Lishon Ohlone people in Oakland, California. So I'm I'm on a different computer. We've had like all the things happen this morning. So really glad to be grounded in the space and here with you all. And of course, it's an honor to be on the panel with these two wonderful beings. So, thank you.
So, hi, thank you, Kunsangla, and thank you, Nazarinla, for great beginning, and glad to be here with you all. Well, for me, I'm more of a very baby Buddhist in that sense, but more of as a community activist and working with communities. that are diverse also within both Buddhist and also outside Buddhist worlds. To be here is special and also rare, because in the political sector or the field or the area that I work in, faith is not something that is taken or considered that easily, or or engaged with in that sense. Or in a similar way, in the Buddhist world that I'm part of, politics and political understandings and political engagements are not that taken seriously or considered that important. So to have a space where we can talk about both of them is too special and very important to me. So I'm very glad to be here.
Hey, hello, hi everyone. And I'm so grateful to be here. So many thanks to all the organizers and the sanghas and volunteers who put this event together. It's really wonderful. It's really wonderful to see so many friends here in the space as part of the audience. I am currently in the southern United States on the ancestral lands of the Muskogee Creek and Cherokee people here in a city we call Atlanta. And I am a product of this land. I am descendant from enslaved people, and my ancestors lived and worked on this land, were forced to live and work on this land after it was confiscated from indigenous communities. So this is very much like it feels like home. I feel as if so much of the blood of my ancestors are in this land. So this land really calls to me. I am Black identified, Southern, queer. I'm fat identified. I'm a larger body person. I like to talk a lot of shit. And some days I'm barely Buddhist. some days I'm more Christian than Buddhist. Other days I'm casting more spells than doing more meditation. So it's like really up in the air right now. I'm in formation. Praise God. So yeah, I'm just really, really happy to be here, to be having this really important conversation on this really important panel. With my dear friends and colleagues and new friend, Tashila, and an older friend, Lev. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And I will, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, so let's get started. Firstly, I think because we know what the topic of this panel discussion is about, patriarchy and queerness and intersectionality, and kind of where these things overlap and where we kind of find them coming together a lot. And so our first question is, how has patriarchy impacted you? Whether it's in your work, on a personal level. It's a very loaded question, I think. There's a lot. So I'm wondering if maybe Lama Rod, if you want to just start, because I know we were, I think it kind of is tied into a lot of your work. I mean, obviously we all kind of, it impacts us in many ways, but if you want to just start.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kunsong. When I think about patriarchy, I think about depletion. I feel a really fundamental depletion, as if I've been born into something that hasn't allowed me to be my most authentic self. And the space that I have been allowed to occupy has been one of violence against myself and others. And it's been one of rigidity, as well. Patriarchy has informed everything, and it continues to inform everything in my life. And it will, I think, for the rest of my life, continue to inform how I move through the world. And I think my deepest desire has always been to be free. And I think what that freedom has often translated into is fluidity. I've wanted to be fluid. I've wanted to flow. I've wanted to expand. I've wanted to practice a kind of deep emotional connectivity to the world around me. I've wanted to not have this or experience a dominance in the world, but to experience a kind of belonging to and with people, to be in power with, not to have power over. And I think patriarchy misinforms my understanding of power, right? And that's something that I've had to work really hard to understand. And of course, this is a lifelong journey, right? So I don't think, again, I will ever be at the end of undoing patriarchy, but my goal is to hold the impact of patriarchy and to disrupt the ways in which it informs my position in the world. And lastly, I'll just say that, like, for me, patriarchy has always been intersectional, right? So the patriarchy that I experience has been the patriarchy that has come at the intersection of being a Black cisgender male and within the South, and being descendant of enslaved people, and being queer, right? And being born, in kind of a mixed class situation. So all of that informs this kind of particular patriarchy that I have unconsciously embodied over the course of my life. And those same intersectionalities, particularly Blackness and queerness, have been sources of liberatory work to disrupt and undo patriarchy and its workings in my life and in my relationships with others.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Fresh, would you also like to share your thoughts on that? You guys could also say pass if you want. But if you want to say something, you obviously are all invited to share.
Thanks. It was one of the distracting questions in the Blizzard drive. So my partner was like, ask me questions about patriarchy to help me focus, to stay grounded, I should say, in some way. Yeah, talk about a complicated experience. I was labeled female at birth, really aligned with my masculinity, but and then not having models of Black queerness, female queerness. And so my alignment, what I did with my masculinity was saw it as a patriarchal experience. And it was really hard to tear apart what's patriarchy and what's masculine as I'm hanging out with the boys and playing with the boys, growing up in the Northern Bronx or just New York City at a time where violence was just out of control. So I've always used my body to fight bullies, the sort of bully's bully. And what I've learned over the decades, or have come to learn, is how much I conflated my masculinity with patriarchy, that I will also be doing the work of dismantling them, disassembling them. Let me look at your question again. So the way it's impacted me is shrinking my experience as a human being, shrinking my experience as a sexual being, because of the way patriarchy and masculinity showed up in butch identified community or masculine identified female community. It's certainly fed into this this traumatized, sarcastic behavior that was coming out, not just in queer community who were traumatized and in bars and in the clubs, but also from family and general population in New York of pessimism. And there was this way that patriarchy just sort of shrunk all of us, didn't allow us to be authentic. So it's impacted me I remember when I transitioned in 2011, so not too long ago. And I was already, quote unquote, we don't necessarily use this word, but for simplicity, passing as male, probably most of my life, even when the breasts that I carried were double Ds, like I was still passing as male. And so I was having that experience. Sometimes there was harm around my masculinity, but mostly there was a space that could be cleared. I always felt safe in my body because I'm large. But I remember transitioning and growing a beard and having one of my white trans male friends say to me, "Wow, isn't this privilege amazing?" And my response being, if it means that I'm more likely to get pulled over or shot in a car, pull over for drinking water, which are things that happen. I was like, if that's the kind of privilege you're talking about, it's not amazing. Like I had to make a really conscious choice to grow a beard, even as masculine as I was, stepping into this new way that I appear in the world. And with that has come the responsibility and the work of dismantling patriarchy in my own system and my own experience. And so I just will say one thing about that. And one of the ways that I do that, when I talk about that in my diversity trainings, is how at night when I'm walking down the street and there are women, I often cross over. And I'm sad about that because I'm a kind person. So sorry, I might be emotional because of the snow, but I'm a kind person. And to walk around in the world as somebody who's feared and followed constantly, patriarchy is, it's gotta go, to say the least. So hope I wasn't too long. Thank you.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. I think the next question I'm going to throw to Tashi Choedup, which is also about patriarchy, because that's the theme here. But when the question is, so I would also ask you how it has impacted you, but also additionally, how do you see patriarchy not just impacting you, but also imbued in Buddhism, and you also as a monastic, as a fabulous monastic who is non-binary and trans and all of this. So how is it for you? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I think there would be any of us in the world that are not touched by patriarchy, I think, or in some sense are not taken away from our freedom to shape our lives as we want or as we desire. Born and raised in a South Indian middle class Hindu family, it's very patriarchal. I mean, as patriarchal as it could get, right? Largely also for me as a shy, reserved, feminine, male assigned at birth, it kind of tad bit gets, rather it always has become about escaping patriarchy more than living or trying to get away from it as much as possible. But also we know it's, eventually you get to know you really can't run away. I mean, the sad part of it is that it's there all around, right? Even before getting into Buddhist community, I think the harsh reality is that even being part of feminist spaces, to realize that they are also not free from patriarchy, right? As much as where my fellow feminist comrades would tell me at one point, Tashi, you're being too emotional. I'm like, oh, am I being too woman right now in a feminist space? Right? You happens. I mean, we all, in some sense, it's so pervasive in that sense. In Buddhist world, I think I remember my first experience after getting ordained and going to Bodh Gaya to live in this Buddhist center. After a few days, in one of the prayer session, we were doing one of the puja, and where everyone was reciting this prayer to be born male in the next life. And I was like, okay, I clearly, do not want to be, for whatever the reason, because I do not want to be this male assigned person in this life itself. And then I was talking to them after the puja about it, like how, it doesn't make sense to me. Why are we doing this prayer? It can't be, anything else. And then it's all senior nuns. I was like the baby in the group, all senior Sangha. Lovely women, lovely people, right? They did tell me that, oh, Tashi, you don't understand this yet because, you don't have the karma to understand this yet, right? And this argument is not a very new argument to me, being born in a Hindu religion, which is also a karmic faith, right? We use karma as a philosophy in Hindu religion very much as in Buddhism, where karma is also used to justify caste atrocities, oppression on women, which also continues to be ironically the same thing, which is surprising me because I moved from Hindu faith to Buddhist faith with certain different kind of worldview, and there seems to be the same kind of misunderstanding, largely because of how karma can be twisted and used, in terms of even to support patriarchy or, anything else that seems to deem the tradition in that sense. So in Buddhism, in my experience, for me, for someone to see me as a trans person, they need to forget I'm a monastic. If they see me as a monastic, they need to forget I'm a trans person. Somehow they both just, in most of my really good friends' heads, they don't exist together at all, I think. So it's this constant negotiation of where do I exist? So much of patriarchy exists that I don't exist. There is no space for me to exist as a queer person, as a trans person, as a Buddhist also, right? So it's a constant figuring out, do I belong? And if I belong, in what sense do I belong?
Thank you. That was great. So I think that I'll pose the same question again, but I'm wondering for Lama Rod and Fresh, do you, in the same question, in terms of patriarchy, in terms of being applicated in Buddhism and practice and teachings and different spaces, but in Western context, or how do you see, or do you feel that there is a difference? Because I think Tashi Choedup is sort of talking about their experience in India and in Eastern communities, and I do feel like there might be a slight difference in the West. Do you also think that it is like that, or what's your experience been?
I think there can be differences across traditions. Absolutely. I come from Tibetan tradition, and I think maybe Tibetan tradition is, kind of weighed here on our panel, but, I came in, I am a convert into Tibetan Buddhism, and I came in and really met and encountered many of the same kind of prayers that Tashi La has mentioned, that you're saying these prayers to be reborn, right, as a man, right? And there are also these really intense contradictions, because when we begin to study Tara, for instance, who vowed only to achieve Buddhahood as a woman, right? So you have Tara, and you have a tradition that values, the male body, so to speak, right? And what I had to do was really take refuge in Tara to find the space and the liberation and the fluidity to be myself, because I'm quite frankly, I'm really the only Black queer Lama anyone has ever met before, so it's like being a unicorn, in the world, right? And it's easy to fall into a place of feeling that you don't belong, right? And sometimes I think about it like this, like I think I spent the first years of my practice trying to find the sun and the light to be seen. And then I realized that I had to actually become the sun, because there was no one who was going to light me up except for me. Right. And so as Lizzo, who's a really amazing American Black woman singer, has saying, it's like, if I shine, everyone's going to shine. And that became my Dharma activity. It's like I had to shine and actually become the place, that I wanted to be, So saying that too, and also really speaking to the ways in which, our tradition in the West is still geared towards men and towards hierarchy, right? And the logics of patriarchy, which is hierarchy and power, and secrecy and lack of transparency and dominance, right? Those are all these expressions that I am working really hard to dismantle, right? But I'm not necessarily a reformist either. I'm much more of an innovator, right? And so it's like, how can I help to create communities where we can have this kind of fluidity and openness and inclusivity, to begin with? Right. And what does that look like now? And so again, queerness and Blackness are these identities that I draw heavily on, because queerness and Blackness are really about liberation for me. It's about being free. It's like, I'm trying to get free because I want everyone else to get free, and I bring that into my Dharma practice. And then you get labeled problematic, as I have, right? When you start talking about the problem, you become the problem, right? So it's no longer patriarchy that's the problem. It's Lama Rod that's the problem, because Lama Rod doesn't follow the rules, So there's a lot there, absolutely, from my experience in the Western convert Tibetan Buddhist tradition.
Thank you. Interesting. Yes. Well, anything that includes Lizzo, I think, is the way to go. I believe. I
have to make sure this is. I have to make sure this is a safe space.
Exactly.
Because Beyonce is going to be rolling out in a couple of minutes too. So, and Big Frida, so I'm be calling all of our people in. So I know this is a Buddhist space, but I know how some of us get, about the rigidity about what's sacred and not sacred. But again, I'm Black, everything's sacred, And as Dharma practitioners, the world is sacred to begin with. Like, everything is an expression of emptiness. So anyway, it's not Dharma teaching time.
Thank you. Fresh, did you have anything to add to that, or should we move on to the next question? Or
first, it's just thank you, Lama Rod, for what you shared, everything that you shared. And you can't separate patriarchy from whiteness. So, and I'm definitely, I don't know, radical, just different. And I show up as I am. And I wanted to say that my mindfulness practice, the Buddhism that I've learned, because I'm not the most studious in the way that many are, has allowed me this freedom to show up as myself. And as I have said to people over the years who've told me maybe I was too Black or not Buddhist enough, that when people stop turning up, people with decades of experience stops turning up to my classes, then I'll know that I'm doing something wrong. And again, just going back to, you cannot separate whiteness from patriarchy, certainly not in the Vipassana tradition, and certainly not in the United States. So that there's always, it's almost like if you don't bust through, and I don't know any teachers that haven't, and that includes teachers in large institutional trainings that have had to force their way into teacher training programs. So unless you kind of push your way through, whether female or person of color, you're not getting anywhere. So maybe that's all I have to say, but I just wanted to name, you can't, whiteness is a big part of it.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Next question. In y'all's opinion, where or how do you think Buddhism and mindfulness can affect change relating to this like yucky like power dynamic within wider communities, which includes, patriarchy and other institutional power dynamics and everything that plays into, our everyday lives, whether it's institutional or from an educational or academic perspective, or, where we see it in our own workplaces, where do you see that Buddhism can, and the practice of mindfulness and cultivating that part of ourselves and centering and all the things that we do in terms of cultivating a practice, how can you see that this can sort of affect changes in the way that we encounter these things on an everyday way?
That was a really long question, so I might need to hear it again. But I want to first add on to something that I said that came up in our questionnaire period during the snow blizzard. Another one of the ways that patriarchy shows up, right, is a super masculine way that, particularly in white experience, allows itself to deny the heritages of Buddhism. So that you might hear people talk about how new it is in the United States and how popular and mindfulness and all this, ignoring because of the way that masculinity is supposed to show up, or patriarchy is supposed to show up, all of the many Asian people who have been practicing Buddhism and have brought Buddhism to the United States, from my knowledge, at least since the 40s. And I just wanted to name that is a process that that's something that continues to proliferate. That it's a new thing, it's a new practice. So, and then when you'll have to ask another question. I think a few of us.
Yes, that's really important, and I think and I'm so glad that you brought that up also, because for me, I'm Kalmyk, Mongolian, and so my mom's people are people who came to the U.S. in the early 1950s, and they were the people who established the first Tibetan Buddhist temples in New Jersey, which is where the community that I'm from, that I grew up in. And I think that it's a lot of history and information that even when I meet like Tibetan people, Tibetan Americans or Tibetans in Europe or wherever, other communities who don't even know about this history, and like the first Tibetan Buddhist temple was built in Russia in like the early 1920s, built by Kalmyk people, right? And so anyway, I think that's, thank you for bringing that up, because as the people who brought it there or was as part of that community, I think it's interesting because I almost never hear about it, and just because I know and I'm from there, I get to like kind of say something once in a while. But yeah, it's not just like something that is relatively new, but it's been around for like quite some time, and not just Kalmyk people, but other Asian communities who also had temples, like especially in California and other states where there were lots of populations of Asian Americans. But yes, so the question again is, can Buddhism and mindfulness affect change relating to the dynamic of, or the power dynamics within wider communities that we all belong to.
I mean, I think mindfulness alone itself probably, I mean, of course, it's important and necessary, might not do much without having it, placed in the context and with the skill and the wisdom that is required, I think. Like, for example, me being born in a oppressor caste family, recognizing, being mindful of my privilege and power and all that it comes with that, being in a caste Hindu family, might not mean much if I do not know what to do, beyond that sense of awareness. Other than, I could either be completely, chilled about it, okay about it. Yes, I have this, I'm mindful about this power and privilege I have, and I keep going with it, or it brings in a lot of guilt, where I become non-functional. I am of no use to anyone other than becoming this self-loathing person. But being aware in a sense where there's space for reflection, right? And also seeing, things in context is important, I think. Especially also, I think, within the human rights and social activist field, in my experience, what I feel is that there's a lot of self-righteousness that comes in very easily because we are on the right side of the politics, or we are politically correct or politically woke, or right. But if we do not have the space for awareness, in some sense, to see, oh, I could also be wrong, right? A space to have imagination that I could be at mistake, right? Without having that sense of awareness and reflection from time to time, that self-righteousness can be very dangerous, I feel. And in that sense, Buddhism, I feel, can inform a lot of the political work that happens, which is really important for among the marginalized communities, queer, trans, Dalit communities, I think. But at the same time, in a sense, as much as it is important, but again, need to be also, Buddhist faith itself also need to be critically looked at. Otherwise, it might not continue to be relevant in that sense. In larger spaces where Buddhist faith is romanticized largely as a progressive liberal faith, and then you don't really critically look at it, and you use it wherever you works as per convenience, and that might not do too good too.
Thank you. Great. Lama Rod, did you have anything else that you'd want to add?
Yeah, and I think, I think the project of mindfulness in Buddhism is really about developing an awareness of who and what we are, that we are expressions of emptiness, space, energy, right? That's our most fundamental divine expression. And I think that in our practice, we have to be asking ourselves who we really are. Like, am I this body? Am I this social, position? Am I these identities, right? Am I this power or this privilege, right, that I benefit from? Like, is that who I am? And how if I allow this sense of self to be conflated with systems of power and dominance? And you have to get to a point where you're having to ask questions to start disrupting that. And that disruption will lead to a great, intense experience of brokenheartedness. And I think many of us are terrified of that experience because we're terrified of losing a sense of who we are, but we'll never get free until we lose that sense of self that is actually a deep misunderstanding that has created a lot of suffering for ourselves and for others. And I think so many of us can use the Dharma and mindfulness to bypass this fundamental labor of brokenheartedness, right? To get free. And so we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. We have to choose discomfort. Actually, we have to do this really, really hard work. And I don't see a lot of us really trying to do that right now. I think instead we're trying to get more and more comfortable at the expense of the planet, at the expense of communities, at the expense of, particularly underprivileged, or disprivileged communities, especially. So yeah, and this is like wandering out into the desert. It's like you have to give up everything, right? And go into that journey of figuring out who you are, and you have to be willing to lose everything.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately in how, first of all, that I think that what you mentioned about the comfortability or like getting to that place, because when you come from Western societies that are so influenced by like capitalism and this and security, and no matter whether you're immigrant or refugee or whatever, person of color or anything, the sort of goal of making loads of money, being in a comfortable space, having security to then not have to think about all of these things that are affecting you or something. That sometimes I feel like that is mentioned a lot as a goal. And also, secondly, a question that I have for y'all is, in terms of trying to find ways to explain or to draw connections in terms of Buddhism and all of these other topics and themes from the framework of discussing intersectionality, sometimes to groups who are either unfamiliar or maybe slightly resistant. What do you do? Or what is, and I know that, like you are talking for, I have loads of experience with it in terms of teachings and trainings and things that you've done. What do you find is helpful in that, in drawing these connections? Because there's so, it's sort of undeniable, in today's age of not seeing the connections between so many of these areas. But what's a way that you yourself, you have found is not in a helpful tip or something, or what are ways that we can help people to kind of understand or to see some of these things of how they're connected when they are uncomfortable to think about occasionally, and are sometimes not the place that people want to go to, because they have to kind of really think about these things in a not a challenging way all the time, but it doesn't enter into their day-to-day thinking, let's just say.
Well, I'll just quickly add this, again, it's like I have shifted my practice towards becoming the sun, right? And part of being a sun is also being a mirror, right? And so it's not that I am doing a lot of extensive training, with communities, it's that I just show up. Right. Representation is actually quite powerful, right? When I show up into a space, I'm Black and queer, I'm talking about Lizzo and Beyonce, but I'm also this Lama, right? And that it really confuses people. And in that confusion, there can be a lot of liberation for folks. I think the conceptual mind gets short-circuited and disrupted when it doesn't know how to make sense of all these things that it has labeled contradictions showing up in one person. So my labor isn't to educate you. My labor is to be myself and let you figure out how to relate to me. But it's not going to be comfortable, because I won't allow you to get comfortable. If I'm not comfortable, you're not going to get comfortable, around me. And I think that a lot of teachers really, they lose a lot of integrity because they're always adapting to people's expectations, right? Because teachers rely, on communities, right, for support, right? And I had to kind of throw that out the window and say, do I want to be supported or do I want to be myself, right? And if I trust the work of being myself, then I'm also trusting that I will get what I need to be okay, because there are a lot of people who need me to show up and be myself, to remind them that they can also take up the space in communities to be themselves, right? And I think that's a really important way that we begin to disrupt patriarchy. I mean, really all the systems that we're talking about, capitalism, ableism, and so forth, is that like we have to be our most authentic self, and our most authentic selves are not reflections of systems of dominance and power, right? It's a tenderness, it's an expansion, it's a fluidity, it's a gentleness, it's a compassionate, loving, kind showing up in the world, right? But you have to go through the discomfort of brokenheartedness to start dismantling, letting go of these identities that we have taken refuge in to experience comfort and stability, as well. So this is a really hard kind of work that you're engaged in. And unfortunately, I think many people come into Buddhism and mindfulness really with this kind of happiness and comfort thing, as a goal. I came into Buddhism not to be happy. Like, I don't really care about being happy. I care about getting free from delusion and dualism. I care about remembering my most fundamental awakened nature. That's what I'm in it for, right? And along the way, if you dedicate yourself to this kind of liberation work, then yeah, the happiness will be there. Like, there is a comfort that arises, but that comfort isn't the absence of discomfort, but rather it is the space that awakens to hold discomfort, really, and not make discomfort the center or the totality of your experience, right? And that's an amazing way to start living, to have the space to hold everything, not actively trying to avoid anything, but to hold everything and choosing how to respond to what needs to be responded to. Right.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Tashi Choedup, Fresh, do you guys have anything to add? I'm sorry I keep saying guys, but I'm from Jersey and we say use guys all the time, and I mean that as a gender neutral, y'all use guys kind of way. But that's just how so I don't mean it in that kind of way. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about it. Because I think honestly I'm still figuring it out how to engage with people, especially in terms of what you asked, to see the connection of these things. Because often in my work experience that I've seen, when things get difficult, when conversations get difficult, often people are willing to let go of decades old of friendships instead of, like Lama Rod said, sit with the discomfort and actually talk with each other, be there for each other, and not give up on each other. And that seems to be quite a difficult task, no matter, whether you're on same side of the ideologies or the same side of the practice or the different side, doesn't matter. If it gets difficult, somehow it feels, oh, we'll stop talking, or we, step away from each other, or we give up on each other, right? That seems to be what feels like easy way out, although certainly painful, but nonetheless, it somehow feels like it's more painful to actually sit with each other, which is scary. Like, how is that, how is, parting ways is better than actually coming together and not giving up on each other, right? And that seems to be a difficult task. And also as a trans person, as a queer person, I've also recently, in the recent times, I've been told by my friends that most people are okay engaging with me and working with me because I am always accommodating and nice, and not in a nice way. This is not being told to me in a nice way, which I agree in a sense. By being this nice, accommodating person all the time, I'm setting this unrealistic, impossible standard to myself and also to fellow queer trans persons, where we should be allowed to be not nice, right? We should be allowed to be difficult people and still be engaged with. We don't need to be always this accommodating people all the time. And that I'm still figuring out how that I can be, have the freedom to be this difficult person also from time to time. Not necessarily this nice person always, right? In terms of especially doing the political work that we do, where it becomes a matter of, pleasing officials, pleasing fellow activists, all of this, funders or grant givers, all of that. So I'm still learning very much about it. What is the way about it that we can engage with people, at the same time, keep up these friendships and love and care and affection for each other as we have these difficult conversations, as we have these impossible conversations of disagreements. And also in limited time, what I've realized is that all these ideological, kind of connections at one end, but it is not enough for us to stick around as a community, right? Because politics are constantly shifting, ideologies are constantly shifting and changing. If we cannot figure out a more stronger ground, common ground that connects us, if it is just constantly fleeting ideologies, then I feel we are at real risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to
go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try to be fast, but I'm thinking about appreciating what the brothers have just said. It's hard to look at these intersectionalities or within ourselves or our communities if we don't think we're worthy or if we don't think we're enough. So there's so much repression of who we are. And whether that's about having to please, or whether it's pleasing other people or pleasing our practices, our communities, or trying to meet, as Lama Rod was saying, trying to meet the community and so that we can sort of make sure we're doing the right things to fit in. He was more eloquent with what he said. But teaching people that they're worthy of love, and they're worthy of their own love and their own care, teaching them to be self-compassionate as these things arise, the things that we don't want to see, acknowledging that we're in a system that doesn't want us to see it, because once we start looking, we start gaining our power. The minute we start waking up, we become powerful beings. We become feeling that we're worthy and that we're worthy of equity, we're worthy of justice, we're worthy of, or even like that, just this idea of breathing says that we're supposed to be our full selves. And so we're pushing against ideologies, but we're also, well, or maybe that's what we're pushing against, is this whole idea that what's the word that I never sing is, I am a wretch, that song, there's a Christian song, I am a wretch, right? Meaning I am nothing. And unless we balance the I am nothing with I am everything, we're going to have people just want to shut down, want to be afraid. And I really, I just finished listening to, Radical Dharma again. And I just want to name how much that book just really opens us up to this idea that we have a right to be ourselves. We have a right to be free. We have a right to be self-expressive. So meeting people there, and really I do a lot of work around self-compassion and self-forgiveness, so that when the stuff gets up, you go right there and then you can open more, and you go right there and then you can open more. So I just wanted to name that. Yeah, thank you for allowing me.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting, I think, to me, because listening to each of you kind of answer these questions and specifically talking about the importance of authenticity or being able to come into a space or come into whatever it is as your authentic self. And not only that, but also I think Tashi Choedup, you were saying something about like not always just thinking that you have to be there in a certain way and be liked and be, I guess, sort of palatable, or not necessarily, or something that is sort of easygoing in that way. Because in thinking, from my experience anyway, of dealing or meeting folks who are from the queer community, in the Tibetan community, in the Tibetan diaspora community, in exile anyway, and also some folks who are from Tibet or in Tibet, who are gay, lesbian, trans. So many folks that I have met really just want to be liked and accepted and being a part of society and being likable and being loved, and have specifically used those words. I just want people to like me. I just want people to love me. And I just was thinking, yes, but also why? Like, why is it that we're going right to there instead of thinking about how to get people to like see you for whatever way you're coming into the picture or coming into society or coming into the community, and getting everybody else to just ask questions and learn more, or figure out how they can change their behaviors or how they can change their habits to, you know, do the opposite. So it's not about, I don't know, but anyway, I think that that's an important part of it, and this thing of being able to accept people for who they are as their authentic selves and how they want to show up in the world, and supporting them in that, in their affirmations of being who they are, and how that's really important. And thinking about how we can do that and bringing it back to Buddhist communities, especially, and how in those kind of spaces, how we can also further to support people in affirming where they come from and how we're supporting them, and their practices, or just how they are, and how it kind of ties all together. So at this point, we're going to go into the Q&A, which I'm going to hand it over to Nazreen, because Nazreen is going to give us the guidelines for the Q&A, and then also then I'll come back and we'll go into some of the questions from our participants. So Nazreen, if you wanted to take it from here, please.
Thank you very much, Kunsang, and thank you, incredible panelists. That's so inspiring to be able to have heard from each of you, and I'm looking forward to more answers. So as a BIPOC-centred collective, we want to symbolically acknowledge the voices that often don't get heard. So that means we want to prioritise the questions from BIPOC, BAME, Global Majority and Queer folk. So if you have a question, please could you put a star, an asterisk before your question, so that we can prioritise those questions. And you're welcome to send it to Rahina or to me. We've got quite a few already. And as we were saying earlier, it's all anonymised. So we won't be using the names of anyone who asks any questions. And when you're asking your question, it would be great if you could flag who your question is particularly directed towards. Please feel free to put comments in the chat. We might not have time to read them out, but we thank you for your comments, and you're welcome to do that. Don't want to take any more time. I will hand straight back to Kunsang, and the questions should magically have appeared. Some of them have come in already in your chat. Thank you.
Yes, actually, I'll start with a question that we got during our panel. Second. So the question is, do you feel it is appropriate for transgendered Buddhists to identify with the story of Avalokiteshvara/Kuan as affirmation of gender or sexual fluidity within a conventional reality and a useful means to attaining enlightenment? That's the first question. And that is for anyone who would like to go for that one. Feel free to start. That was a very specific question. Yes, so I'll just, if you want to answer that one, feel free to, literally any of you.
I'll just give it an attempt. I mean, I think, the relation or the relatability with Chandrasing Avalokiteshvara being, Chandrasing as a male form in one tradition and Guanyin in another tradition, kind of makes it probably much more possible to see this gender transition or different gender identities across traditions as a trans deity. Quite some people do it. But at the same time, I think one can, I mean, of course, if that is easy and helps in one's practice, one should do it. But at the same time, I think if you're connected to the historical Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, or Tara, doesn't matter who it is, right? Because all of these enlightened beings who realized, emptiness, actualized emptiness, they are free of gender identities, right? One can even begin by questioning, did really, Gautama Siddhartha Buddha, always assert that he's a cisgender heterosexual person throughout his lifetime? Probably, or is it just our reading of him, or the dominant reading of Gautama Siddhartha, the historical Buddha being a cis-het person, I mean, because the deities or the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas we connect to, it can be completely as we see them, I think. They will fit into whatever the view and perception that we look at them in with, I think. That freedom we should keep with ourselves always, no matter what most of the other teachers will say. I mean, that's my take.
Thank you. Lama Rod, Fresh, do you guys have any thoughts? I have other questions as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with Tashi, absolutely. And I think Chandrasi or Avalokiteshvara is, for me, such an important deity in the canon. But as Tashi was pointing out, all the deities within the canon are important because they're all expressions of emptiness, right? And so when you're practicing deity yoga, in Tibetan, in the Vajrayana Buddhism, you're suspending fixation to ego to begin with. So you're becoming whatever is the most liberating expression in the moment for you to become, right? And that's always, if it's in deity yoga, deity practice, it's the deity, right? So when we become Chinrezi, we shouldn't be tied necessarily to gender or any fixed identity. We should be fluid, expansive, and actually resting within emptiness in any way. And I'll just add too, like when I started practicing doing deity yoga in my training, it was actually quite liberating because you're essentially sitting and imagining that you're a whole range of different deities doing all kinds of things. And it's like drag in a way. Like it became an expression of drag because I was like, oh, I can be an expression of freedom instead of an expression of rigidity in the body and form of Rod, right? I can become Tara, right? And I can be Tara in union with like a male deity, and how interesting, and transformative that practice becomes. But you have to be willing to let go, of who you think you are in that moment. So it's very skillful, extremely skillful. And a deity can show up in any form. in any expression as well. So like, it's just like, I just think this is so incredibly liberatory. And this is why I came into Tibetan Buddhism. I chose Tibetan Buddhism because it was like this path that I could just be free, in my practice. I loved it. And it's helped me to survive and to start thriving in the world in all the intersectionalities that I occupy.
And I'll briefly add, thank you both for the beautiful responses. It's why I refer to the Buddha as he, they, or Buddha, the social construct I'm not going to apply to this enlightened being. So he or they work. I don't, just wanted to throw that out.
Great, thanks so much. The next question, we kind of talked about this, or everyone kind of touched on this a little bit so far, but the question is, what about the role of the body, physical body, in disrupting patriarchy? What are some thoughts that you have about that? I think each of you has kind of discussed it in a certain way already in talking about your physical bodies or your physical presentations or all of these different kind of themes. Is there something that, or do you guys have some thoughts about that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll just name that masculinity does not equal patriarchy. And so being aware of when we're using our bodies in a violent way. And let's see, I may have gotten lost a little bit, but the role of the body is to honor the body, and that means accepting all of the manifestations which flow between masculine and feminine, and I feel like for me throughout the day, throughout our lives. So I think honoring the body and caring for the body is what I want to say. Because I lost my track somewhere when I glanced towards snow again. Thank you. I'll trust these two brilliant guys or people to follow up.
I think patriarchy does a lot of harm to our bodies. All our bodies, I think. Doesn't matter what gender, given patriarchy does a lot of harm to our bodies, restricts it, limits it, imposes things on it. While all of that anyway is happening, of course, disrupting patriarchy is important, but also bodies do need tender care. So I think one way of probably dismantling patriarchy using our bodies without further harming our bodies is probably simply, for example, displacing our bodies from our positions of power. From time to time, recognizing, in what place and position of power, because our bodies in certain situations, certain contexts, certain locations occupy certain power. So how can we displace from that ourselves from that position of power, being mindful about it, stepping back, should be one way about it. But I think it can be done in any way, as long as I think one is careful about giving the body that tender care that it needs and not further harming it, which is already so troubled in this patriarchal world.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question is both for Fresh and Lama Rod. Could you please talk about connecting to positive masculinity? I'm a gender fluid person with a strong masculine side. What is divine masculinity and how do I connect with it, given all of the negative associations I have with men and the fact that I haven't been welcomed into the fold as someone who is brought up as female? That's the question.
Yeah, as Fresh has been saying, there's a difference between patriarchy and masculinity. And I think early on, when I began trying to understand this, like I had to actually take refuge in what I call the divine feminine, as, part of my practice is being a devotee to the mother, to the expression of the cosmic universal mother as expressed from Tara to Kali to Durga to Mary Magdalene, across the board, like what is the divine feminine? So I really took refuge in what that meant. And in the divine feminine, I began to understand myself as also an expression of divine sacred masculinity, which is for me was just an expression or an extension of the divine feminine, right? It was an expression of gentleness, of care, of nurturing, right? And we can get deeper into kind of tantric theory around, what we understand masculine and feminine to be, which I don't think we have the space for that right now. But, just to say that for me, masculinity was about connecting. It was about emotional fluidity. It was about figuring out who I was and actually kind of letting go of labels. I had to kind of let go of what was feminine and masculine and just say, who am I at my most joyous, grounded, and gentle expression? Who am I in that space? And that's what I'm going to practice, whatever that means, and I think we have to start there, right? And again, if we don't feel welcomed in spaces, we have to go out and create our own spaces, right? And then we will see that other people will find us, and start creating community with us, because there's a lot of folks who are just trying to find a home, right? And I can get really intense about identity, absolutely, because I think identity in the relative is really important, but I'm also and I'm not also any of this as well. And that's a balance that we eventually have to get to. I am and I'm not, which is, again, this is an expression of the Heart Sutra, which is, my primary text, that I work with in my practice, right?
Yes. When I was in my 30s, I remember I woke up in the Castro in a little room in an apartment and looking at myself and my body. And I'm like, I'm here. This is it. This is what I wanted to be. And a little voice in my head said, yeah, but you're not a man. And it was just sort of my first awakening to, whatever the part of me that was challenged about some of the parts of my body or the way I was showing up. And what I did was with that energy is I totally dumped into feminism. And I started looking at feminism theory, and I started reading more poetry by women. And I really wanted to take that in and find out how I can use my energy, not just to, fight off muggers in Manhattan, but also how to use my energy to support people who were strongly female identified. Some part of that was also a part of me. And so really accepting my femininity was part of the process, literally 10 years of really considering what it would mean for me to transition before I did. And was I denying my female self? Was I denying my body? I don't feel I was born in the wrong body. I don't have that experience. But really it's about self-love, self-care. That opens us up to what some of Lama Rod named. Men have always been nurturing and kind and compassionate and been able to hold, right? Patriarchy is something that tries to erase that. I didn't start crying till after I started taking testosterone. And I just want to name that because I hear so many times about all the guys you'll hear, once they take testosterone, they stop crying. For me, it opened me up to being freer and more of myself, and really being able to embody masculinity as I don't know what the words is coming up for me. It's like a partnership in feminine energy, not in opposition to feminine energy. I know we don't have much time, so I'll let you move on to the right question. Thank you for that beautiful question.
Thanks so much. Okay, so last question. And I'm going to pitch this one to Tashila. How has questioning or working to expand patriarchy, I guess maybe thinking about patriarchy, impacted your ability to think of other dimensions of your experience within the context of race, culture, etc., more expansively? How can this also help others to do the same?
I think that, in my case, patriarchy, but also at the same time, being a caste Hindu, being born in a oppressor caste, that also, one as a queer trans person, there's certain impact of a patriarchy on me, my everydayness of life, and the decisions I make, and all that. But also at the same time, the privilege and the power that comes from being born in a caste Hindu, dominant caste Hindu family, also gave me access and made me who I am or where I am today. But with both those things, with patriarchy and with caste as identities, recognizing them as a part of me, right? I mean, I am, as a queer trans person, I'm also patriarchal in many ways. Right? I recognize what patriarchy does around me, but also I have to, in some sense, recognize what patriarchy does within me and through me, right? Unless that is seen, in a sense, otherwise I become the self-righteous person of, oh, I know my caste privilege, and I also, I am a queer trans person, somehow I'm free from patriarchy, or, in a sense, feed me into patriarchy, right? That is important, I think. Otherwise, it's easy to be lost in terms of challenging patriarchy, questioning patriarchy as much as, but also what, in a sense, questioning patriarchy as people who are patriarchal, right? People who are practicing patriarchy. That means then becomes this us and them. I am somehow on this side and they are on the other side, right? But whereas we are all in the same pod, we are all in the same ocean of samsara, and how do we help and support each other to become free from patriarchy, to become free from caste dominance? And I think where we all need support of each other, and friendships of each other, to be able to do that. It can't be this us and them. I think the moment it becomes the us and them, then we are going nowhere. Other than fighting with each other, we are not making a headway anywhere. So how do we get away from the us and them, and how do we look at the systemic structural problems as such, at the same time recognizing our own privileges and power positions and our own locations, and address these as they matter for all our liberation, not just mine, not just any, but all our liberation, meaning that means this is our collective work, right? And that need to be the basis of it, I think, for me, from where I see it. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Just to say thank you to each of you, all of you, for joining us and being a part of this panel. I appreciate it so much. Just having the time to have this conversation and to have a panel with people who are from so many different experiences, but also there's so many commonalities, I think, within the themes. And personally, just for me, on a personal level, have as a queer Tibetan Mongolian person who's currently working at a Dharma center and working and doing Dharma stuff, and also trying to do inclusivity stuff at the same time and integrating it and finding ways how to do that in a cohesive way, which is practical and also involving all of these conversations and themes is really helpful just to me, and also just having this time to do this and is just like so wonderful. And it's also still Losar, so I feel like, and it's LGBTQ History Month in the UK and also Black History Month in the US. So I feel like we've hit a lot of things, you know, with one panel, which is celebratory and nice. And the fact that y'all are also down with Lizzo, I also appreciate that, and I think that's fantastic. And also Beyonce, although I don't know about her thing that she did in Dubai. I'm not about that. Remains to be seen. But anyway, thank you so much for participating.
Wait, I'm
Russ,
so
did you have
sorry.
something to say?
I just want to respond to something you said earlier really quickly about trans women and maybe non-binary people who are working to be accepted. I just want to name that that's about their safety. And so, you know, that's a conversation you can have, but that eagerness to be accepted is about just feeling safe. I didn't want to leave that out.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely about safety, and the conversations with the trans women that I know was definitely about safety. But it was interesting. Just very quickly, it was interesting because at the time that I had that conversation, I don't know for sure they didn't bring that up, but I wanted to kind of bring that up into the larger conversation that I was having at that time about queerness in Tibetan society, in exile society, that it was an issue about safety and not just about being well liked and all of that. But that's so important, and I'm hoping that down the line that we can have more discussions about that and about feeling safe and being safe and being able to show up in these spaces and as your authentic self. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over now to Nazreen, who's going to kind of do a closing for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again. That's really so nourishing to be able to listen to. Wonderful. A quick word about Dana or donations. Heartfelt gratitude to those who have already contributed for your generosity. If you'd like to offer more, or if you haven't yet contributed, please do so using the links that are magically appearing in the chat. 100% of your contributions go to support and sustain the network of participants and the panelists, and it goes directly to those on the front lines of change, and you know, people who are working to build collective well-being. Very important work. Quick plug for the next event, which sounds amazing. This Saturday coming. Education for the Ecological Crisis Using Buddhist Ethics. Again, an incredible panel, and there's amazing work that's going on. So it will be Bhante Buddharakita from UBC, Lopsang Phuntsok from JGCC, and Brother Chan Thap Dung from Plum Village. So Saturday, the 4th of March. In PST, it's 7 a.m. quite early. Here in the UK, it's 3 p.m. and it'll last a couple of hours, but you'll be able to get all the details of that in the chat. And if you lose that, it's also on the website of Buddhists Across Traditions. I could say a little bit more about that, but I see we're a bit tight on time, so I'll let you read that from the link. And now I'm going to invite Jacques to invite the bell so that we can close with a dedication of merit. May we all awaken to understanding the roots of suffering and inequities and act to transform this suffering into the action of love, compassion, and understanding. May the wisdom of the Noble Eightfold Path of right thought, right speech, right action, right mindfulness, and right insight lead us into healing ourselves and the world. May the energy of openness, care, and commitment we have generated today extend across time and space, encompassing all beings in the past and 9 generations to come. May we all blossom an atom of courage to love without fear, hold the suffering of the world in compassion, and generate the wisdom to see the humanity in the other. May our drop of peace encompass the world so that all beings can live in harmony with one another on this precious earth.